For staying with us right here on Mongaten TV. Fast forward, without much further ado, let me introduce my guests. I do have the Director Legal at the NRM Party, that is Oscar Kayunga. He is joining us for this conversation on the continued controversy dogging the Kayunga LC5 by-election, and also Benjamin Katana, a lawyer representing the National Unity Platform Party. Very good morning, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. Indeed. Glad to have two lawyers in our midst to make sense of the legal dynamics that took center stage in the Kayunga LC5 by-election. Of course, we do know that the NUP position is to go to court. Bring us up to speed with the latest. Benjamin Katana.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning to you and all the NTV viewers. To begin with, is that what transpired in Kayunga was a constant and timely reminder that we live in a country where you have institutions that have a duty to perform certain functions, but they do not exercise the mandate and power for the benefit of Ugandans, but for the benefit of an individual. We had an election where the army took over the entire process and other security agencies, and of course helped by other actors who should ordinarily be responsible for ensuring that there are fair and free elections. That is the Electoral Commission.
Indeed.
So you have the Electoral Commission conspiring with other actors in broad daylight to fraudulently take away the will of the people of Kayunga and instead appoint a chairman LC5 when the people spoke loudly on whom they wanted to be their leader. And to get back to what you raised is that the candidate has taken a position to go to court, and our duty as a party is to support her endeavors. And again, to reiterate the position as articulated yesterday by our leader, the Honorable Chaguranyi, and the party, is that we do not engage in these processes because we believe in the fairness that is going to come from these institutions, but we consider them as part of the front line in our continued struggle to liberate this country, to make sure that these institutions are in place to serve the people of Uganda and that they exercise their power in accordance with the law and for the benefit of the people of Uganda. So we are not going to court because we believe that these courts are going to give us justice, but we consider courts as one of the front lines on which we shall continue to engage and weaken the dictatorship that we are dealing with.
What do you make of this, Oscar Kayunga? What is happening in Kayunga especially, the controversies that have continued to dog that by-election?
Well, an election in Uganda will sadly always have a controversy at whatever level. So it's not surprising that the losing party in Kayunga has, adopted the standard rhetoric or narrative that we have we're used to hearing. And when my dear brother says that they are going to court, which is certainly their right, and the law provides for that, but then says that they don't believe in the court system. Already you can see we are going to have, I think, a replay of what happened during the presidential
Supreme Court case.
Yes, election petition before the Supreme Court, where they will concentrate perhaps more on making political points rather than doing the actual job of litigating.
So it will be a continued campaign against President Museveni, as we might see in the near future.
Well, at the end of the day, it becomes it's a pointless exercise, because if you're going to go to court, you go to court with facts, and you go to court with a strategy from a legal perspective. Okay. And if you have the evidence, right, there's no reason, and you're certain and you're sure that you have got credible evidence, there's no reason why you should start from the negative, saying you do not have respect or confidence in the institution. For us, on our part, all we have been put on notice, yes, that they are going to go to court, and we're going to do the very best to defend the legitimate victory that was registered by the party in Kayunga.
Legally, how security behaved in Kayunga, was it justified? Beating up people left, right, and center ruthlessly?
Certainly not. Certainly not. I wasn't there on the ground. I was back here in Kampala, but my colleagues were rather disturbed by a few instances, or certain instances, where the security agencies, particularly the police, for whatever reasons, were acting in a manner that was really disturbing. You got the sense that they were actually campaigning for our colleagues. Yes, because
by beating,
by beating, you know,
public sympathy for NUP.
Yes, yeah, and then creating public sympathy for NUP in certain instances. Look, there are certain instances where, to be fair, okay. And this happens, you know, during campaign period, where people get overexcited, right, and start acting in a manner that is contrary to the law. Obviously, that they get what is coming if they do not respect lawful orders. But for Christ's sake, there are people who are selling their merchandise on the road, have nothing to do with what is going on. And then you get policemen coming and throwing the merchandise in trenches and blah, 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 and beating them. Why do this?
Indeed.
Obviously, that creates disaffection from certain sections of the population, and I think this must be really, we should have a discussion about this. Their process must be really examined and revisited, because at the end of the day, look, both of us are all the losers.
Indeed.
Yeah. Okay.
When it comes to protecting humanity.
Yes, and human rights. You know, I think that we should start at that level. Okay. And yet, having said that, I think we should also have a discussion amongst us, those of us who are in the political space,
Indeed,
about how to get our respective supporters to act within the law during times of politicking and campaigns, because if all parties agree to play by the rules, there would be no need for intervention from the security. But if you have got certain elements within the public who support one party or the other, who decide to start defying the regulations or guidelines put in place, I mean, look, there are always going to be those consequences. So I think it starts with our supporters and with the people at play, and I get the sense, I may be wrong, but I get the sense, and from repeated observation, that sometimes this is part of the rule book, playbook, if I will. You know, you want to get sympathy, you want to make a point, let us incite them, so that they know there's going to be a certain reaction. Then the narrative will begin.
But according to what we are getting from Kayunga, it seems like the incitement was coming in from the other side of the NRM, especially when they stopped Kyagulanyi from entering this jurisdiction to campaign. No. When they said, when you come at the same venue where President Museveni is going to be, or in the same district where President Museveni is going to be, his security is going to be compromised. But it was on an official campaign trail.
But you see, that is precisely the point that I've just been making. Before campaigns, right, the Electoral Commission issues guidelines.
Indeed.
Right? And one of the key guidelines that is issued by the Electoral Commission is that it has it gives a timetable, because each party gives the AC the timetable of where and when it's going to be. Now, in order to maintain law and order, the EC comes out with the timetable and indicates that on such and such a day, the president is going to be here, one candidate is going to be the other side, right? So, and why do they do that? Because it is known that in policy, at least politics in Uganda, emotions tend to run high, and therefore there's likely to be instability in the area. So, when the president is on is stated going to be on a particular day, right? Then you don't come in. Those are the guidelines. But in this particular instance, the president of NUP comes in very well knowing that the timetable that day was not his. He could have come in on the other day according to the program issued by the EC. So you can see that's the behavior I'm talking about.
Katana, it's like Oscar is saying the blockade that we saw against Robert Chagulanyi was justified. He was never supposed to enter Kayunga on that particular day when President Museveni was also supposed to be in the area. What do you make of that?
Well, thank you. To begin with, I would like to first set the record straight.
Indeed.
That our lack of confidence in state institutions, would be state institutions which have now been taken over and they are part of the Museveni political machinery, is not born out of lack of strategy or facts. We have information, we have evidence that our candidate, for example, scored 31,000 and the NRM candidate scored 20,000.
So
we have all the
results were
declaration
just flipped.
forms. We have all the declaration forms from the 338 polling stations in Kayunga. But it's born out of the track record of lack of impartiality in these institutions. If you have the chairman of the Electoral Commission presiding over cheating in a local council election, who is even, with due respect, a judge, and so you are going to the same courts that are full of people who believe they have been appointed to these offices as a favor from the person who has interest in the matters that are being adjudicated upon.
So you feel like it will be hard for them to rule otherwise?
And the track record of how they have been handling some of these dicey issues, it really doesn't inspire any confidence. But on the issue of the conduct of security forces, I think my senior brother Oscar here is downplaying a very big problem of political violence in this country. And political violence that we have seen the commander-in-chief praise. He has praised his soldiers for beating up his opponents. So it's not true that these people beat our supporters. They beat us because they love us. They beat us because the army and other security agencies have been reduced into tools of fighting political wars for the incumbent. And so what we see happening is again the continued shrinking of the state of Uganda and being repressed by an individual who uses all these state institutions at his disposal to achieve political gains. First of all, in terms, talking about blocking Chagulanyi from going to Kayunga.
Yes, Benjamin.
The roadmap was not given at a president, but candidates. And on that day, our candidate, Harriet Nakwede, was supposed to be campaigning in certain parts of Kayunga, just like Andrew Muwonge was supposed to be campaigning in certain areas in the district.
So she had a right to invite anyone she wanted.
Exactly. But because the RDC and the other actors felt that the overwhelming support that the Honorable Chagulanyi would attract in the area would embarrass their leader, who was also campaigning in that area on that day, they chose to set up camp at his home, place him under house arrest without any legal justification, and stop him from doing anything that day other than things that he can do from his house.
So the blockade was to simply not show how powerful NUP is in Kayunga.
It is and part of the rigging machinery. Because you see, an election is not an event, it's a process. If you tie my hands and my legs and you stop me from campaigning, even if on the day of voting you don't do ballot stuffing. But the one thing that I would like to emphasize is that even with that rigging, in terms of the flawed process from the time of nominations through the campaigns, the ballot stuffing that was presided over by security agencies, the arrest of the agents of Nakwede and election observers, even at the point of tarring, one of our supervisors, the Lord Councillor John Sebufu, was roughed out of the room for protesting that the results the Electoral Commission was now relaying were a clear departure from what had transpired at the polling station, because we had all these declaration forms. But with all that rigging and the harassment and intimidation of our supporters, our candidate still managed to defeat them hands down. They had to alter the results at the last minute to give their candidate victory that he did not deserve. In effect, grabbing victory from the people of Kayunga. But my senior colleague here was talking about playing by the, that if we are playing by the rules, that then there would be no need for security to come in. But you see, you need to understand the structure of the politics of General Museveni, that the army is part and parcel of the political machinery that keeps him in power. There is no need for any provocation for the army to be deployed. When they're having an election, there are people that are deployed in areas specifically to ensure that he wins, from the army, from police, from other security agencies. These are facts that are known. And so part of what they must do to make sure that, that he wins and that candidates of his choice win. And he bragged the other day, good enough, lately he speaks his mind. I don't know if it's on account of old age. He said what NRM wants, it must get.
Benjamin Katana, what we are
doesn't matter whether they are breaking the rules.
What we are seeing right now took center stage in the administration. Obote 1 and 2, it took, center stage. The fact that the military is taking over elections. Do you feel like in Uganda here right now under Museveni, it is the Electoral Commission in charge of elections or members of security?
The Electoral Commission...
And political leaders like the RDC.
The Electoral Commission certainly is not in charge. The Electoral Commission, which is supposed to be independent, unfortunately their name is Independent Electoral Commission, work on the directions of one of the key interested parties in the electoral processes of Uganda. That is General Museveni. So he directs them on what to do. And you clearly can tell that sometimes they don't even know where these calculations are coming from. Both in 2016, people were able to establish where the tarring that eventually led to the results that were announced by the Electoral Commission were coming from. Same thing with 2021. So the Electoral Commission, just like other state institutions, have been eaten up and they are under the control and manipulation of an individual.
Electoral Commission is under the control of an individual. Who is this individual?
The individual is General Museveni.
The individual is President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. What do you make of this? Oscar Kayunga.
Absolute hogwash.
Absolute hogwash. Go ahead, explain to us.
You see, if that were true, you see, anybody in politics would like to have 100%.
Indeed.
Okay, victory. So I think my friends, my good friends in NUP, are selective in their analysis. They took Buganda. It is public knowledge that during the general elections we did very poorly in many parts of Buganda.
General Museveni says some tribal sentiments took center stage in the election. The way Buganda voted for NUP and so forth. But that is a conversation.
Just like you also voted for in some parts of Angola.
That's another discussion.
Indeed.
Okay, that's another discussion.
Yeah.
So, if this individual called General Museveni was in charge of the Electoral Commission, how is it that they NUP managed to do very well in Buganda and do very well in parts of Busoga? So where they win, should I say that the Electoral Commission is not in control, is independent? And where they lose, then it is in control of our party chairman. It doesn't make sense, really. Okay? It doesn't make sense. They are the largest opposition party in parliament. That shows you that in the general grand scheme of things, the Electoral Commission is trying its very best to play an independent role. Okay. Otherwise, we would have had a situation like in our neighbors, in our neighbors, which country I'm not going to mention, where you have 97, 98% representation of the ruling party in parliament. That's not the case today, right? If you're going to look at the performance at presidential level, you can see that the percentage of win over the period of time has been going down, right? So it started off in 1996 with 70%, then it came down to 69, and so on and so forth. This most recent election, it was what, 50, 57.
Indeed. 56.
56. Now, those are issues which we are internally discussing and asking why, okay? Because we were not happy about that. But those percentages wouldn't be there consistently going down and maybe going up a bit if the system was being manipulated.
It would have gone to 98%.
It would have been a consistent,
like that
yes.
Congo Brazzaville.
Whatever, yes, indeed.
He would have 10% if he was not manipulating processes. He would have 10%.
Go ahead, Oscar. Indeed.
Given those statistics, you can see that obviously, my good friends, I think, are sore losers. Where they win, they say nothing about the Electoral Commission. Where they lose, oh my God, it is a crisis. So really, I think what they should do is appreciate the gains they have, and just like us, work on improving. Okay, within the parameters of the system. Our democracy is growing. And I think we should have the discussions we have, and with the honest discussions we should have, is about how it should be better. I do not think and do not subscribe to the principle that the Electoral Commission is being manipulated. We could have said the same. There have been instances where the Electoral Commission, for example, behaved in a manner that was contrary to the law, and we have gone to the court in certain instances, as is evidenced by some election petitions, and proved our case. Okay.
I see.
Yeah.
Like you did mention, there is a neighboring country that has 98% representation from the ruling party. Well, according to Uganda here, 529 MPs are in our 11th parliament. You do have some 339 plus MPs. So ideally, you are the majority within this August House.
Yes.
And the fact that we are seeing a lot of, violence coming in from members of the security, does that mean we are not ready for multi-party politics, Mr. Oscar Kayunga?
No.
That's what Captain Francis Babu seems to think.
Well,
and also Biraro. Ephraim.
You see, that's a bit of a complicated position. In the referendum of 2003, 2004, the population decided to vote for multipartism. Thing is that as a society, we and I think are not yet ready to respect the institutions of parties, and that is why you're seeing a phenomenon where, and currently in the current structure of parliament, you'll find that actually independents are actually more than the opposition. If you make the analysis, and the independents are coming from both sides, NRM and the opposition candidates. That shows that the parties are still young, right? And the attitude within the parties, both NRM and our sister parties in the membership there, are yet to understand the concept of institutional democracy within political parties. Okay. But you see, this takes time to grow.
Indeed.
This takes time.
It's been only 16 years.
It's been only 16 years. This takes time to grow. Fortunately, I think, and this is a good news for the future of politics in Uganda, the configuration of the parties as they stand today is very different from that when we had our independence. Okay? Because at independence it is well documented that parties were actually formed along party lines, along religious lines,
tribal lines,
and tribal lines and so. So they were not based on principle. And ideology. So that you can see.
Kabakaeka, DP, UPC.
Yeah. So that is definitely that is definitely changing. For those who claim that today parties are along tribal lines, I tend to contest that. I don't agree with that. I think Uganda is slowly moving beyond that. I mean, if NUP was a Uganda party, how come my colleague here,
Benjamin Katana, you have Louis Rubongo, yeah?
Yeah, so those who are pushing that line, I would ask that they rethink.
It is the president pushing that tribal line.
I respectfully disagree.
Indeed.
I look at it from a different perspective. Some elements within NUP, without a doubt, were pushing that line. Were pushing that line, but it's a line that will not help them.
I see.
Yes, it's a line that will not, it's inevitable. That there are some
Benjamin
people-
Katana, are we ready for multi-party politics? Why are you pushing the tribal line?
Well, it's unfortunate that some people have that thinking that there's tribal
Sentiments.
in the formation and running of the party. I think it is a deliberate effort to malign the party and present it in bad light. It is true that in the socio-economic trajectory of our country, we have people who subscribe to different parties, and for them, it is about the tribe, it is about the identity. If you take an example of NRM, I know so many people who meet me and say, this is where you should be because of your tribe. So many people.
Indeed.
So
It happens to Rubongo.
I find it very unfortunate that it is people in NRM that are pushing the narrative.
This is where you belong.
That NUP has tribal sentiments more than there is in the NRM. I think the devil that tribalism is needs to be approached from a bipartisan approach, not wanting to look at it from a partisan perspective, because you lose the point. Because even people outside the political theater, there are those who make decisions on other matters based on identity. So I think it is
those in the diaspora and so
it is something that we need to face, but not from a partisanship approach. I would like to clarify on my senior colleague here was talking about, in some countries where people get 90%. You see, dictatorships globally manifest in different forms.
Indeed.
You have dictatorships that only hold elections for people to decide whether the president should continue or should leave. They don't even allow, it's more or less like a referendum.
Yeah.
In DRC, Zaire, under Mobutu, they would have elections for people to choose whether the president and his party should continue leading the country or not.
More like a one-party state.
In Iraq, under Saddam Hussein, more or less the Ba'ath Party would get 100%. In Sudan, same things. But then you also have situations, especially where there is some level of civic awareness. For example, and I will mention in Kenya, under President Arap Moi, it was a hybrid dictatorship, but you had pushing back from people like Raila Odinga and even Jaramogi before Raila and these other actors. And as a result, he would not get 100% not because he wished, but because of the overwhelming opposition to his schemes.
And of course, you did mention Sudan here. Our man Omar al-Bashir was winning over 90%.
Exactly.
But now we are seeing protests, meaning he was rigging all the whole thing.
So in our situation, where we have managed to win, it's not because there has not been attempts to manipulate the process. It's because our support has been overwhelming, that even when they have tried to manipulate the processes, the results return our candidates as the victors. Even in Kayunga, with all the manipulation involved, with the harassment involved, with the bribery presided over by the Prime Minister, Nabanja. You saw videos, people were lining up to receive money, but still the people of Kayunga stood up resiliently and rejected
the Prime Minister is now accusing
candidate.
you as the National Unity Platform Party of ballot stuffing.
There is
number
evidence.
one,
Let her
cheating number
produce it.
two.
She's just being dishonest.
You think?
Yes, because we have evidence.
Well,
When people were lining up to receive money.
Sorry to interject.
Interject.
But you see, what he's talking about is, I hope, is going to be subject of the electoral petition that they're going to file. Because all that is a matter of evidence.
Sure.
Okay. And fortunately, I think now we can debate because I think the petition hasn't yet been filed. If I'm not
Yes, it hasn't been filed.
So now we can debate this to a certain extent. You see, it's always interesting, and I find this always interesting.
Yes, Oscar.
We have just come from an election. Emotions are all high, and on both sides. Of course, they are disappointed that they have lost. They always have got something that they're going to blame for losing. But at the end of the day, whatever evidence is put and brought under serious scrutiny, okay, the true picture always tends to come out. The true picture always tends to come out. For example, I'll give you an election petition in which our farm participated. I can't go into. There's an appeal going on. I think this relates to the LC5 Gomba election, which happened. You know, the noise there was that, oh no, they rigged, they changed results here and there, da 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 da. When it came down to the evidence in court, okay, what was presented was absolutely contrary to what was being broadcast about the rigging. The documentation, it comes down to the documentation. There was no cogent documentation being produced by our colleagues from NUP to show that we had actually rigged the process in that particular constituency. Right? So when it comes to court, it is not Worokoso. It is Bwino. Facts.
Do we have the facts, Mr. Benjamin Katana?
Sure, we do, for Kayunga particularly. But I would also like to correct the impression.
Yes, go ahead.
That many times the NRM people will come and brag and say, bring the evidence, when they very well know that they have arrested the agents and taken away DRA forms and other forms of evidence. I'll give you, no. When we were during the presidential, no, because I have facts. During the presidential elections, our people who were returning declaration forms from Western Uganda, from Northern Uganda, were arrested and the declaration forms taken away from them. Personally, I went to the office of the Director Crime Intelligence to demand for the release, and the Secretary General of the party to demand for the release of our declaration forms, and some of them were released. So we are speaking with facts. You want us not to talk about it because because it's not factual, but it's factual. We have information. We are not saying these things out of imagination. This is what has been transpiring. We have agents being arrested. So when you come here and say, bring the evidence, but fortunately for the case,
confiscating the evidence.
Fortunately for the case of Kayunga,
for the case of Kayunga,
because we also had, anticipated that.
Indeed.
And we had different plans. We were able to retrieve all the declaration forms.
Okay.
And we have them for the 330 polling stations. The 8 that are missing are for those polling stations where voting was halted because people protested the massive ballot stuffing.
You do have Captain Francis Babu who says rigging only took place in one polling station, but according to your assessment and investigations, how many were affected, polling stations, as far as rigging is concerned?
More than half of the polling stations. And even
that is
away
150
from the,
plus.
Yes, away from the polling stations, even at the Tari Center, they would just, if our candidate, for example, scored 160 votes, they would say she has scored 50 and the other one has scored 120 on a number of them, and we have that evidence.
Of course, you were still explaining to us whether or not we are ready for multi-party politics. The next question was why NUP is towing the tribal line. You answered the tribal part, but you didn't answer whether or not we are ready for multi-party
I believe that, first of all, is that there was a referendum in which the people of Uganda chose that politics should be under multi-party system.
2005.
But two, multi-party system is based on key constitutional provisions, the right to associate and things of that nature. And I believe that democracy best grows under multi-party system. What we need to address is how to facilitate these parties, not in terms of finances, but in terms of environment, to develop and grow. But we have a situation where today political parties cannot even go and hold a training session in a parish. For example, I come from Bushenyi. If NUP today, the party of NUP went to hold a meeting in a parish to sensitize the party members, it would be disrupted by police.
Even with the observance of COVID-19. And they always
have an excuse. Previously it was public order management. Now they have COVID-19. Even when there are, efforts to observe, yet you see Oscar's party, having trainings, having meetings. So I think the challenge we have is not the challenge we have is environment, the political environment in which we operate.
Multiparty politics is on paper.
It is very toxic and doesn't allow multi-party politics to deepen.
How do we resolve this situation? Of course, you came in here ready to divulge resolutions as to how we can offer reprieve to this problem. How best do we alleviate this situation, create a conducive environment through which NRM thrives, NUP thrives, the FDC, the UPC? Because we had a referendum in 2005. Besigye was in exile. He felt like, oh, multi-party politics has been restored. Let me go back to Uganda. What happened to him? He was thrown in jail. He was nominated in jail. He was only released 2 weeks to the election. He had to campaign for a week or so. Here we are, 2021. The same has befallen Robert Kyagulanyi, one more or less in the 2021 general election. We've seen the same taking center stage in these by-elections. You do have Joyce Bagala and her petition that is coming up. We do expect fire to also take center stage. How do we alleviate all this and create a conducive environment? Oscar Kayunga.
You have platforms, two platforms where talks are going on, discussions are going on about that one. I personally, the reason why I was in Kayunga, one of the reasons was that I was participating in the iPod meetings, which is a conglomeration of all the parties, and these are discussions that are ongoing. And you also have the National Consultative Forum, which is established by the Political Parties and Organizations Act. So these discussions are always ongoing. And like I said before, you see, the concept of political parties and how they operate is something that is still yet to be fully understood by membership of the and even the public. To answer directly his point about lack of access, to the public by the political parties, they want, and he did correctly mention that the first reason was, the security orders go to the POMA Act as an excuse for not allowing assembly and meetings to happen.
Sections were struck out.
But you see, again, some of this debate is always a bit one-sided. How is it that in for certain parties who follow procedure, meetings are allowed, even at grassroots levels?
I hear you on that one.
Yes, and yet on others, they are not. Why? It shows you there's a problem here. They are not working within the legal framework.
Indeed.
Okay? So it is not correct to say that political parties are being, what do you call it, stifled. No. It is people who decide that they want to be defiant and they will not follow the rules. Okay? But look, we all play according to the rules.
All right, thank you very much, Oscar. Benjamin Katana, what needs to be done? A minute before we go to Ivan Walnyole in Entebbe.
Well, it's one thing is for because the leading violator has been the NRM and the Genome 7. And for us, we believe that for multi-party politics or democracy to thrive in this country, then we must dismantle the current political system where opposition to the incumbent is perceived as a threat to national security. And you are handled as such. You are handled as if you are a rebel for saying, for me, as Katana, I don't subscribe to Oscar's party, then you become a rebel. So I think we need to change that system and accept that people cannot have the same thinking, cannot prefer the same organizations and individuals. And unfortunately for Uganda, that will take the removal of Genome 7 from power, because for 35 years or so he has been in power, he has proved that for him competition is rebellion.
Thank you very much, Benjamin Katana, a lawyer representing the National Unity Platform Party, and also Oscar Kayunga, the Director Legal at the NRM, that is National Resistance Movement Party. Thank you very much. And of course, we do have Ivan Walnyole who would like to interest you with the traffic update as far as Christmas is concerned. It's already around the corner, and we'd like to let you know where you shouldn't be going and where you should be going in that regard as far as traffic is concerned. Let's take a break. We'll return shortly.